Now our guest speaker is one of our own members, Owen Harris. And Owen's a part-time mature age student at RMI University, studying a Bachelor of Computer Science. And his topic tonight is drawing as making. So over to you.
Thank you. Yes, my topic or talk for today is drawing as making. So, yes, this is a computer club and makerspace, but so I've been studying computer science, but prior to that I had like a very different background. So I studied art and design, specifically industrial design. I never really worked in the fields, but these are pursuits I've had, although I have worked at a gallery for a few years. And so I wanted to talk a bit about drawing, since, you know, a lot of the projects that we get involved in at the club using technology or making things that relate to technology or using tools, they involve design and three-dimensional shapes. And, you know, there are ways of working with computer-aided design or CAD, which can do the bulk of the design of shapes or bringing together shapes for you. But I wanted to talk a bit about drawing as a discipline and how that can give you different ways of thinking about product design or making and developing three-dimensional shapes or objects that you might want to 3D print or build in other ways. So I'll show you some examples of artworks that I've done, and that might give you some insights into different ways of thinking about drawing and how that relates to technology. So obviously you have observational drawings and design. So this is an existing car where I just tried to represent it faithfully and accurately as I could with pencils in this case. But it was, you know, it had its challenges because it was a surface that reflected the background. So if you look into, like, say, the headlights, for example, or along the side of the body of the car, you get sort of the reflections in the landscape there. So this is a more challenging sort of surface or texture to represent. And here's some more observational drawing. And this is a different style where you might use, or I'm using line to represent both colour and shade, but also, because this technique's called hatching, and so there are different ways you can use line. So the kind of fine art that I did a bit of study in was specifically focused on drawing, and drawing focuses on line, you might argue. And so line can be used to represent outline, but it can also be used to shade and show depths of shadow and shade, but also contour, as in the folds or the convex and concave nature of a surface. So yeah, the challenge with hatching is that you're trying to represent light and shade, but in doing so you're also representing the contour of the surface in a way. And one interesting sort of exercise that I'd encountered when learning to draw was there's an exercise where you can, or you're asked to imagine an imaginary ant moving over the surface of an object. So if you think about it, the ant isn't following the outline, and it's not following what's light and what's dark. It's just following the bumps and concave, convex nature of the surface. And I should have actually brought an example of that, but it's funny that it starts out quite random, but the more you imagine this imaginary ant moving over the surface, the more it actually does end up looking like the object you're trying to represent. So what I'm getting at here is that line can do different things: outline, shade, and represent the curves of the surface, and you can sort of go back and forth between them. Well, I guess this isn't primarily line, this is more using tone. This is a charcoal drawing, and yeah, rather abstract shapes here. And I thought I'd just show this as another approach. And so obviously I'm not representing anything. Yeah, it's a bit inspired by the art movement Futurism, which is sort of controversial because it was tied to Italian fascism, but it I liked using charcoal just because you could sort of really refine the shapes by going over and over it, which you can sort of you can replicate that sort of effect in like Photoshop by using the smudge tool. You can sort of move areas of light and shade around in that way. So at one point I entered an art competition at, I think it was at Kingston Town Hall, so not far from here, and I didn't know what the theme was. The theme's revealed, and then you have like a certain, I think it was like 8 hours or something to complete an artwork in relation to the theme. So I think that the theme was just green. So I just gathered a bunch of leaves as preparation. So these are literal, you know, leaves just put on a piece of paper that I photographed, and then I tried to render them with pencil, and I sort of ran out of time because I put a fair bit of effort into each one, but I was quite happy with how photographic it looks, even though that's pencil. So this is an example of using a Wacom tablet. So there are a variety of ways of using digital tools to aid drawing, and one of them is like not a tablet as in like an iPad with a touch screen. It's a Wacom tablet is like just a plastic surface that's touch sensitive that you can use a stylus on. So I was just exploring anatomy here as like a reference tool because I was interested in doing comics, so I wanted to use this as like a reference for just different gestures of expressivity that I could refer to, and use as a bit of a shortcut for future drawing. And here's an example of, so this piece features Frank Zappa, who I'm a big fan of, and I decided for some reason I wanted to do a motivational poster, which but take a different spin on it. So it was called a hard taskmaster motivational poster. But anyway, the reason I wanted to show it was this is using brush and ink, and so that sort of, although ink drawing goes back centuries, it sort of came into certain popularity when, or common use when printing really got going in the 20th century, or like popular magazines and comics, and illustrators used pen and ink to create illustrations and drawings that were very easy to reproduce with printing presses. But so yeah, I was interested in doing comics and maybe even getting into that as like a career at one point. But I was very slow, like typically like American comics would come out like once a month with like say 28 pages, so you can imagine the artist would have to do like a page a day, but I would take much longer than that to do equivalent drawings. Like this one, for example, I spent as much time painting with white paint in between the lines as I did the actual lines themselves. So that's not really like a fast-paced commercial art or enterprise. I was getting more into like a perfectionist sort of thing. And I've even used the brush to do like that writing there down the bottom, which I guess comic artists and illustrators typically didn't use the brush to do the actual lettering. They would usually use like a dip nib pen or maybe even a fine liner, but yeah, I just was trying to develop or refine like my idea of what like the perfect line or aesthetic of lines were, because you know, then we come to the subject of aesthetics and what is a beautiful line or picture or piece of art and what's ugly. And you know, there are many sayings about that, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and people argue though that there are actual like mathematical basis to these sort of things. So like for example, architects and maybe sculptors and mathematicians, of course, are interested in such concepts as the golden ratio, which is like a relationship between numbers that reoccurs in mathematics but also in nature. So that's a reason why people think that it's like some kind of key to proportion, and it's related to the Fibonacci sequence. So there are a lot of, like I say, things in nature like flower petals. You can see these proportions in them, and in common everyday objects like say A4 pieces of paper have like ratios related to the golden ratio. And here are some examples of how the Fibonacci sequence can be converted into a spiral. And you know, some people would argue that this has certain harmonious proportions which maybe even relate to musical harmony and other kinds of mathematical proportion. But you know, me personally, I don't want to get out a ruler or a calculator to decide what looks good. So I've tried to develop my own sense of proportion, and I've explored line and proportion in different ways. Like here, for example, is a bit of a maybe ugly or crazy sort of exploration of line, just I suppose taking the concept of doodling and exploring that in a bit more of a fine art sort of context, sort of trying to maybe mess with or challenge what is two-dimensional, what is three-dimensional, what is a beautiful line, what is an ugly line, what is a shape, what is a symbol. So I've basically come to the conclusion that yes, there are some rules such as the golden ratio about proportion and design that can be applied to architecture and things of that nature, but you can also just develop your own sense of these things, and maybe it changes from day to day depending on what mood you're in. But yeah, I feel like I've put a fair bit of effort into exploring the nature of line and aesthetics, so now I have somewhat of a sense of it and I can make quick judgments about it. But also... oh yeah, I also wanted to mention, if anyone has any like questions or anything, you can interject, or like raise your hand if you're here in person, or maybe speak up on Zoom. But so I have explored some of the more conceptual areas of art as well, even though I'm probably more inclined towards the more commercial and practical, or maybe lowbrow aspects of art rather than the highbrow ones. But here's me experimenting with conceptual art, and you know, one of the things about conceptual art is that often the explanation or the concept is more important than the actual thing itself, which is maybe a criticism you could level at it. But so here I have literal ink being pumped through like a what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Sorry. Yes. Yes. The fish tank. That's the word I'm looking for. Fish tank pump is pumping the ink through, tubing, literally spelling out the word ink with the definition of the word ink in the background. So it's a bit reflexive and using the same concept in different ways. But I should have painted that plinth because it looks really disgusting what it's all sitting on. But so yeah, I have dabbled in the more conceptual side of things, but I also bristle at it and don't necessarily fit into it as well. Like, for example, this is like something I submitted to an art magazine that was doing a special on architecture and art, and it was rejected. But I guess the concept was sort of, it's not really architecture at all. It was just a piece of graffiti or something like graffiti just put beside buildings in order to look like it was architecture. And I didn't really provide much. I was supposed to submit like an explanation as far as like the concept behind what I chose to do, and I didn't really provide much of an explanation, so maybe that's why they rejected it. But that's something about like the fine art world. You're supposed to come up with like, sometimes with like exhibition proposals, you're supposed to come up with like the concept of the artworks you're going to create before you create it. But in the art world, at the same time, they also highly value or put forth the idea that the experimental and the avant-garde is the most important thing and the leading edge thing, but you know, I find that like experimentation, it's hard to plan that. You know, it's sort of a bit of an oxymoron that how do you plan something where the concept might emerge through play or experimentation. So the idea that you would come up with the concept of artworks that you're going to create, that I think that works sometimes, but also what if you get a better idea or you don't like the idea anymore, or after creating several artworks you just want to try something else. So it's a bit fraught with difficulty. So here is something I did in more of a industrial design or product design sort of context, although I did call it a sculptural letterbox. So yeah, it's supposed to be a letterbox. There's like a slot for mail in the front, and it opens up at the back, and there's a tube there for newspapers that go through it. But it was laser cut out of steel with CAD drawings and painted with automotive paint. So it's not exactly like it wouldn't be a cheap commercial product. It was, and I don't know who would want it, but that went in like the foyer of some corporate building for a while. So I think we can move on from that. So I have in front of us, I've set up some cameras. I just got these cameras because we have the new podcast studio, and I've been experimenting with podcasting there and different, obviously, audio technologies, but also Karen Addis. We've been learning about and experimenting with cameras, and she has similar little vlogging or podcasting cameras to these, so I bought a couple, and I've only just unboxed them today, so I'm happy that I was able to follow the quick start guide, and also just started using OBS Studio, which is the program that you can use for streaming and stuff. So yeah, that's not a static image, so I can, if I move the microphone, I can do drawing and stuff here. I've got a light box, but I don't know if that looks good or not on the camera, and it's probably not that necessary anyway, so I'll just leave it off, but it's an option for like tracing. This is just a device with a light in it that makes tracing easier, which you know, once you learn to draw, tracing is sort of looked down upon, but it's a good way to start out for people that aren't confident about coming up with original or creative. I mean, yeah, tracing can be creative, but people that don't know where to start, tracing is a good way to start. But I just was starting today, just because I'm really, really rusty, because I've just been focusing on programming for the last few years, so I haven't really been doing drawing. But I started out just drawing some three-dimensional shapes, just the basic ones, like cube, pyramid, cone, sphere, and adding some rendering. And I decided what would be interesting. I put it into Google Gemini Nano Banana. I think it's called Nano Banana Pro. They're image generation program, because yeah, I'm quite pro or optimistic about AI, but I find most people in like art and music are like AI doomers. I guess it's understandable if they feel like this is just going to replace the thing that they like to do, but you can, you know, there's different ways to approach it. Obviously, the obvious way to start out is just to write a text prompt and generate an image and leave it at that. But if you go beyond that, if you try to iterate upon that or interact with the image generation program, then I think it gets more interesting. So I put in, I guess I'll bring up so I just put that first, I took a screenshot off OBS Studio of that and put it into Gemini, and I said, please add some more shapes. And then yeah, it drew on my drawing in such a way that you can't tell what was AI generated and what was originally there, I suppose. And then I printed that out and traced it and added more to my drawing, which I guess there's various ways you could interact. You could, if you're working in a purely digital format, it's maybe easier to just download the image and put that into Photoshop or some other image manipulation program, but I literally printed it out and started interacting or responding to that. And then it generated more complex shapes, and then I asked it to generate even further ones, and then it brought up this shape which sent me off searching what is that exactly. I've seen it before in like the form of like a glass bottle, but so that's where is it? Oh yeah, so maybe not everyone's aware that you can search Google not only by words, but you can put images and search images. So if it's a common image, it'll bring up like the location of the image on the open web, but you can also just ask questions about the image. So I asked, what shape is this? I've seen it in glass, and it said it's a Klein bottle, and then I followed that to Wikipedia, and it's an example of a surface with no distinct inside or outside. So so quickly went from like drawing spheres and cubes to really challenging mathematical concepts all of a sudden, which was spurred on by this interaction with the AI, and so it led me to discover a bit more about that concept. I'm quite interested in those forms of like geometry that challenges our perception of space, or maybe plays with illusion. And yeah, one of my favourite artists is MC Escher, even though he's maybe not respected in the same way as like the fine art canon or pantheon of artists like, the Picassos and Dalis. He's seen as a bit more of a maybe commercial printmaker or something, but I think it's really interesting because he plays with mathematical concepts as well. So when he started out, he wasn't really doing illusions. He was doing more like observational works. Like he travelled through Europe just drawing the landscape in really detailed format, but somehow that led him to observing like the mountainside, and architecture led him to like explore the geometry in more challenging ways, and he explored like these sort of representations of something that's not possible in reality, but you can represent that in an image. Oh, and I wanted to talk a bit about perspective because, people that are creating three-dimensional objects or 3D printing have to deal with the idea of like a z-axis, an x-axis, and a y-axis, and it's not necessary that you know how to draw or that you understand perspective necessarily, but I think it does help to think about these things. And so perspective is a challenging concept, and it's not something that beginners can learn overnight, but I've found it, just a really interesting concept. So here's like an example of three-point perspective, and so these green, red, and blue directions could be likened to X, Y, Z, but in reality, it gets even more complicated than that, because there's such a thing as like curved perspective, because if you look at a photograph or look at the way a road or a long building trails off into the distance, there's actually a curvature to it. And and also in doing landscapes or observing the landscape, obviously there's the curvature of the earth. So it's not as simple as just parallel lines going in X, Y, Z directions, even though you might want to just restrict yourself to thinking about that sometimes, because in something like CAD, that's maybe more convenient not to have to think about it, curved perspective at all. But in addition to that, like with drawing, so yes, there's like three-point perspective, which can be a useful technique, but like what if this cube here, what if you tilt that slightly in each direction? Does the 3 points of perspective then have to tilt as well? Or is there a new set of additional 3 points of receding dimensionality in addition to that? So does it become 6-point perspective, or it becomes very murky and complicated? Maybe there are laws, or not laws, but rules to this that I'm not aware of, but I've found it that just through doing observational drawing and also imaginative drawing, you get a bit of once again a sense of it, which is maybe a bit of a theme that I'm trying to introduce, because I'm aware that, like, technology and computing relates to STEM, and there are, often yes and no answers in these sort of fields, but I guess I'm relating some of the aspects of art and drawing where you're not going to get those sort of yes and no answers. So in dealing with perspective in 3 dimensions with complex shapes that are tilted and not aligned to a grid, like, how do you deal with that? You just have to sort of try, and so yeah, I know these aren't like beginner concepts for someone learning to draw, but the reason I wanted to draw on this kind of paper is that, like, you can do there are ways of some people would argue that it's good to be able to do a confident line that is exacting and gets exactly what you want the first go, but that's very difficult to achieve. So sometimes with doing underdrawings, it's about just like starting and trying to do a shape and then realizing that it's wrong, and so you can trace over it. And similar things are possible in like Photoshop with layering, where you can deal with like a work in progress that you can get more refined with over time. But so I don't have a plan as to what I'm going to draw, but I was hoping maybe there could be some suggestions, because my idea or hope is that there could be like some form of collaboration that could get started through this, where maybe I can draw things that other people might be challenging to other people, because obviously design programs will work to defaults of shapes that are the most obvious shapes and the most simple building blocks, but once you start combining them together and challenging what's two-dimensional and three-dimensional, you get to those Klein bottle type shapes. This is good. I thought I wouldn't have much to speak about, but I've been filling up the time. This is another thing that I do sometimes, is like draw in a notebook, and this is a zine, which is like just a photocopied booklet, which is like maybe in some ways in the digital age zines have been replaced, but in another sense they're just, because they're so simple to make, that they're a very accessible kind of form of making, with just like photocopying and staples. So I tried to like replicate the little notebooks that I sometimes keep to do observational drawing, and like, so there's like drawings from like on the train or at cafes, churches. I like the architecture of churches, or gigs. There's like bands, and self-portrait when I was much younger. And what else? There's some just three-dimensional design there, which isn't really anything other than something that looks a bit sculptural, and some more observational drawings. So those are... Yeah. And I've got a few of those, so if anyone wants one, and yeah, architectural details there. But yeah, maybe, are there any questions or any requests for me to draw like a TARDIS? I have to do that from memory, from seeing it out there. I don't know what, or I could bring up a reference off Google Images, of course. Yeah. So yeah, you can see I have like a scratchy line as like the underdrawing. But I find that's preferable, and then I can put a darker line over the top as like the final line. And sometimes in comic style drawings they use like a light blue pencil, because light blue doesn't photograph or photocopy very well, so it sort of gets omitted when you do the final inked version. It's on a bit of an angle. That's all right. There's the keyboard sitting at an angle off the side. It'd be very difficult to draw the keys. But there's the space bar at least. I'll have to do some kind of shorthand for the keys that shows the crisscross nature without drawing each one individually, because it's a bit fiddly. That'll do. And then once you've done like a rough underdrawing, you can do a more confident outline, sort of with something more permanent, and that is a way to not have the pressure of doing the final drawing in one go. So since this is incomplete, I might ask Gemini to complete it and see what happens. Take a screenshot. That's one way to input into the AI and see what happens. Yeah.
Owen, would you tell it a style that you wanted it to use in replicating what you're doing?
Oh, that's a good idea. Definitely you get something that you, yeah, if you have a specific idea about that, for sure. They actually, they ran into trouble in terms of, like, if you say, I want it done in the style of this specific artist, they, yeah, copyright, so they've avoided that, but you can sort of get around it, I suppose, or just refer to a more general style, or, you know, I think there's a Japanese animator or animation studio called Studio Ghibli that became was referred to a lot at one stage. Well, I suppose it could have done an IBM PC without any reference from me, so that didn't really work with the drawing I had much, other than just use the yellow paper. But oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So unless there are any other, yeah, it has, hasn't it? And I could ask it to adhere more to my drawing. Yep. Yeah, so definitely different mediums. It's really good at hatching. I was surprised, and it's probably getting better every week and month, because I would have thought that would be very challenging for an image generation program to do the fine sort of lines of an ink drawing, but it's really good at doing that actually. Well, as you can see with no, it doesn't want to base the drawing on what I did, but that's all right. Is there any other questions?
Yep.
Oh, yes, actually, I wanted to show some other drawings quickly, just because they're more related to product design. Just because yeah, this relates more to technology and engineering, because industrial design, which is what I studied a bit here, was some people describe it as like a mix between art and engineering, which is a nice catchy way to describe it, I suppose. And I was probably more on the arts side of that spectrum, although yeah, exactly. So even though I've never really fully understood how engines work, or I never really studied aerodynamics. This was more of like a styling exercise, but you can see that the challenge, I suppose, was with the automotive drawing was keeping the design consistent from position to position or view to view, because it's one thing to draw it from one angle, but then to translate that to another angle is a challenge. And
Owen, the pencil drawings that you're doing lend themselves to reproducing as a vector graphics type format in a digital sense. Have you explored or thought about the crossover between that and CAD? Like you're going. It's not too hard to go from an SVG file. You can import that into some CAD 3D modelling programs. Have you sort of thought about what possibilities and opportunities there might be there for you?
I haven't, and I should, because I'm sure it's advanced a lot. Because some of these drawings are from like 20 years ago. I just thought it was a good topic to talk about, even though I've been focusing more on programming. So, but like here's an example of, as you say, like line drawings that could translate to CAD. Here I was just like coming up with designs for, as in like irons, as in the appliance, the iron. And one thing that could be really useful about AI is like just providing, like you might want to come up with the actual creative ideas behind the design, but then AI might be able to provide lots of variations, because one thing I found about design is that there has to be like a trial and error process, or like an exploration. It's not easy to come up with the perfect design straight away. So AI could certainly help with variations upon a theme very quickly with it, even if you want to sort of control the final decision or the input in some way. Yep.
Yeah, so following up on Rob's question, once you have it into a CAD, that's pretty straightforward, but then translating that into a design in the real world, you know, through 3D printing, laser cutting, other, you know, manufacturing thing. I guess you haven't done any of that. That there's some real challenges there because your pen can be so much finer than what most machines can reproduce. And
it's a good point, and it sort of relates a little bit to what I wanted to show next. Is so these were just like exploded drawings that I did to learn a bit about how things are manufactured. So this is a stapler that is that I've taken apart, and I'm sure people who focus on engineering or electronics, they can identify with the idea that you know, taking something apart, you learn a lot through doing that. So similarly with drawing, you learn so much by taking something apart and drawing all the details, and so you learn about like the actual, you know, because when you typically we look at something for like a few seconds and make a mind about it, but when you have to draw something and spend like an hour looking at it or more, you notice a lot more details. Like there are parts of this that have nothing to do with the function of a stapler. They have more to do with like the manufacturing process of like injection molded plastics and things like that, which is something to learn about if you're interested in manufacturing and creating objects. So yeah, exploded drawings are useful to do if you want to learn drawing, and or useful to just understand if you want to do like IKEA or something like that. Just understanding just an object taken apart and displayed in its constituent components. Yep.
Why did you purchase 2 cameras, and what models are they?
They're DJI Osmo Pocket 4s, which have just been released, and they're apparently not available in some countries because of cybersecurity concerns, but they're available here. And yeah, why did I purchase 2? It's probably wasn't necessary in this case, but just so you could have like a wide shot and a close shot on something like some making project.
And this could be a large subject, but just a quick answer. What's the copyright implications of getting AI to develop your original art?
It's a good question. I think, I could be wrong, but I think, you know, you're allowed to, or the conditions state that you can use AI to develop original ideas. However, there is a different concern of like, if you're coming up with an original idea, like particularly for a commercial company, if they're developing a new product they want to keep secret, that might be an issue. Putting the input into the AI memory. You know, I'm not sure exactly what the conditions are in terms of how they store that or maybe train on that. So that's something to think about.
Sean's mentioned in chat he's currently exploring layered SVGs for using with CAD for making illuminated signs. Have you done something like that?
No.
No.
Sounds interesting. So SVGs are more two-dimensional, I presume. So more for graphics, yeah. So I think we've hit 8 o'clock. So thanks for the questions, and yes, sorry this was a bit last minute, but we have some speakers coming up in future months that will be more prepared.
Owen, I don't know who the guest speaker was that you had planned to come today, but I'm glad they didn't make it, because we've had a very interesting talk, and it's a whole area that's completely new to me and probably to a number of other people too. So thank you very much for that, and it's good that we've got the opportunity to meet you.
Monthly notes, right. Okay, there's been a bit of stuff going on in here. You may all notice I'm wearing it with my inaugural club Makerspace tee. This is not a t-shirt. I bought another $5 one at long sleeve shirt at Target, literally $5, and put that on, which is the new slightly revised logo from the MelbPC logo. I took it on myself to change it a little bit to make it more easily reproducible in different formats, namely 3D printing, iron-on transfers and what have you, including a font which has rounded ends, so it's easier to reproduce on those technologies. If anyone wants to make themselves a t-shirt, just go and buy a preferably all cotton t-shirt or long sleeve shirt or $500 dress shirt if you like, and I'll certainly, if you show me the receipt for $500, I'll definitely give you a iron-on transfer. And it'll be cool to have people walking around with that on. You notice I've also got a name badge. I issued these to committee members. I have to say I'm a little disappointed that they're not wearing their name badges tonight, because, and that's not a personal thing, it's just I think it's a nice, it helps the lubrication of the social situation that people are named, and that's we'll get you one.
I've got one in the car.
You haven't got one of these. That's just a little, I guess, a hint of a suggestion too, that you do name yourself when you're in here. I think the social interactions are very important. I really do. And talking of which, in a couple of weeks, exactly when is it we're doing the daytime monthly?
Vic will speak on that.
Yeah.
I believe it's Tuesday the 19th.
Right, okay. We believe on Tuesday the 19th we're having our first daytime monthly meeting. I tried to start it going a few months ago, but just kind of ran out of personal puff, shall we say. And that's really to try and counteract the fact that COVID put such a dent in the people being present at night, and as we all invariably push past the 80 mark, a lot of us, I'm about to bump into it in a couple of months' time. It's hard to go out at night. I live virtually around the corner, so it's fine for me, but people who live further afield, it's not pleasant. So we're going to try this idea with daytime monthly meetings. It will be a different format, yet to be determined, I think, and a bit more social, and maybe with a little bit of grub to go with it as well. So, because we have a professional caterer in our midst now.
As well as or instead of?
Oh, as well as, not instead of it. No. Well, we've got a decent number of people in the room today for modern times, shall we say? For a rotten day, yes. It's not exactly nice outside, is it? The makerspace transformation is proceeding, I can't say apace, but it is proceeding. I believe, hopefully in a few days' time, certainly by the next monthly meeting, I hope that we will have the area on the other side of the corridor there rearranged into a sort of a single room, but with a partial dividing wall and sliding doors, to become a makerspace. And once we have that space defined, we can start to equip it. We already have a sort of high-end-ish 3D printer, and we have a large number of 3D printers that Mick takes care of that are available for members to take home. Have to talk nicely to Mick and he'll sort you out with one, I think. We acquired recently a specialized printer which is capable of, it has actually a belt, endless belt on it, so you can produce hundreds and hundreds of things or long objects. And in the studio, the sound studio, which is kind of behind me here, some of the lighting is now printed on this thing as sort of 2.5 meter long plastic light things covering some LED strips, and it came off the printer. The CNC machine, I believe, is sort of getting perilously close to completion. So in not very long time, again, hopefully by next month's meeting, Mick's brought in one of the plastic strips for those in the room to be able to see. Mick, do you want to bring that down and show us? Yeah. No, I'm just giving you the publicity for your 3D printed thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we should have a CNC machine fairly soon. That's a large, very rigid, large bed, three-axis CNC machine, which has been built with the skills of several of our members. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got a couple of projects in mind for it straight off. Personally, I've been on behalf of the club exploring the sort of transition, the crossover between hard tech like 3D printing, CNC, or what have you, that sort of technology-based stuff, and the more craft, arts-oriented activities. Because we acquired, shall we say, a group of ladies who do their sewing projects here in the club rooms once a month. And it sort of brought a whole new dynamic to Saturdays in the club, and I thought, hey, this is really cool. So let's see if we can sort of do stuff that's going to be more attractive to a wider kind of an audience rather than just old blokes playing around with their milling machines and CNC cutters and 3D printers and stuff. And so I've been sort of experimenting with all sorts of crossovers with UV setting epoxy resin. This name badge I've got on is kind of one of those. For those of you in the room, there's a little pile of stuff on the end of the bench there. The stuff, all experimental, sort of tentative, let's see how this goes kind of stuff, that can open up a whole new set of sort of creative activities, which is really what making is about. So that will hopefully start to bear some fruit. We've got embossed copper foil, we've got hot wax seals, jewellery type of items made with coloured epoxy and what have you. So some interesting stuff there. And part of the concept there is that any specialised equipment that's needed for it, if possible, we will make it ourselves. And by making it ourselves, we can brand it with our logo, and that spreads the message, etc., etc., etc. So there's sort of a marketing element in that from a couple of points of view. I seem to have copied and pasted the same lot of stuff twice rather than some other stuff in my notes here. The other thing that's on the threshold of happening is the Moorabbin Makerspace website has, with a lot of input from Rob, we've sort of done some technical tweaks, should we say, to the website structure to make it consistent in terms of the way it's built with the MelbPC website, but it's going to be a very different website than MelbPC. It's going to be, certainly initially, because the Makerspace itself is still a work in progress, that website will hopefully actually project the fact that, yes, this is a work in progress. We're not going to serve you up some glossy stuff that's not true, but here's an opportunity for anyone out there in the community who wants to get involved in some of these activities to come along and share their passions and have an opportunity to express their passions and do some combined tech and artwork and what have you at the same time. So it's sort of kind of all meshes together. So that'll be a fairly dynamic thing, probably a lot of blogging on there. And I intend to also put the underlying instruction information for the various bits of equipment onto that website with QR codes attached to the equipment. So if you're going to use a printer, you scan the printer and you've got the instruction, the do's and don'ts right there on your phone straight away. That's the ambition, and it is at the moment an ambition. Hopefully we'll be there sometime this year. Hello? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I won't repeat everything I just said because I think that's pretty much the way. Another thing I want to just say as well is that I started this weekly What's On every Thursday, and at first I kind of did it, well, no, actually right from the start I had Marlin, our administrator lady, fill in the sort of repeated calendar type stuff. Right now Marlin's doing the whole thing on her own, so I think she's doing a pretty good job of that and keeping people informed. But I mean, if anyone's got some stuff coming up that they think is relevant to the What's On area, not so much general purpose stuff, but just so people know what activities are taking place, contact Marlin and she'll put it on there. He's doing a really good job. I wish he was here to hear me say that. Okay, I think that's about it. Thank you very much, and I think Mick's going to take over.
Well, I'm sorry I'm not as prepared as everybody else tonight. I've been a bit busy, so I may repeat some of what David's already mentioned. Forgive me. But firstly, I'd like to thank Owen for his really engaging talk tonight. I'm going to watch that again on video too, because I missed a little bit of it. But that's just the depth in our own ranks of knowledge and hobbies and interests that you can become part of as well. So, yeah, good on you, Owen. Very interesting fella, our Owen. Now, some of you saw me dragging some big white thing along up here. Last month I promised that I'd have something to show for that belt printer that we scored. So this is a 2.7 metre long 3D printed strip to diffuse an LED strip to go into our studio. So, pretty cool printer. It can print that in one piece. It's a conveyor belt printer, so the length of what you want to print is limited only by your imagination. It could print kilometres as long as you kept the filament up to it. And it does some really unique stuff too. On a normal bed slinger printer that I fix for people around here, or the Bamboo Labs printer, where you've got a nozzle that sits on top and pushes down on the build plate. When you're building something like a cube, you need to have some infill inside the block for that filament to land on top. With the belt printer, you don't. This is a 50mm cube, completely hollow, and no sagging faces. It's because of the way the printer prints on a 45-degree angle as opposed to a 90-degree angle. So it's always printing, once it's laid that first layer down, it's printing on itself, and so it's self-supporting. So it's a very different way of looking at design when you're using that printer, but it's got some really cool features that you can come up with some really cool stuff. So I'll enjoy some more experimenting with that over the next few months. Sorry, I'm getting all over the place with my volume. I'm going to diverge a bit. I didn't prepare during the break to plug my computer in, so I'm not sure if it's going to work, so I'm not going to try. But I'd like to thank some people that are not here, and hopefully they'll see this online on our YouTube channel. 3 gentlemen, Lewis, George and Rocco, from the Bentmore Men's Shed, round the corner here in East Bentley. They built us a TARDIS time machine facade to go in front of our network server rack in our lounge to make it a bit more interesting looking. And they've done a remarkable job, and they did it out of the goodness of their heart. And in the goodness of my heart, I'm going to return the favour and donate a couple of 3D printers and some lessons to them. So we're developing a relationship with them that hopefully there'll be ongoing projects we'll do together and community here at Moorabbin. That being said, MelbPC isn't just in Moorabbin. It's not the only part of our whole community. We've got Wadham House in Mount Waverley. We've got North East SIG. We've got all these other SIGs. If you go to the website, you'll see the current SIGs listed. That's been updated recently, I believe. So the varied interest you might have that might not align with my idea of fun, 3D printing and microcontrollers, doesn't mean you won't find your kindred people here. You will find somebody that's into the same things as you, more than likely. And if not, bring some more down that are into that stuff and start your own little group. But yeah, Wadham House, that's where a lot of our mainstay members from the day dot hang out. And they've been doing some really interesting talks and stuff down there too. George Scarback's been talking about EVs versus hybrids and doing the research on that. Calvin's been talking about the impact of video and AI on data storage and data centres and the cost of that and the environmental impact and all of that. So some really interesting topics which I unfortunately haven't been able to make it up there myself to see them in person, but I know that they've got some interesting stuff to say too, so I will try and get there more frequently. But yeah, good on those guys for keeping on and bringing relevant information in each week and each month for the members. Where am I? Expos, opportunities to market ourselves without spending money. We're not very good at marketing. We don't have any marketing experts tapping me on the shoulder or tapping the president on the shoulder and saying, hey, I can help you get the word out. So we're doing the best we can. And, we're all a bit hackish at it, but, we're getting there. But we try and attend as many expos that we get invited to as possible, because that's a good way of getting word of mouth out and talking about the stuff that we do here. So we've got an expo on the 2nd and 3rd of June, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday, at Jeff's Shed. Now it's a Trade and Tech Fit 2026. I think it's through the Education Department, and it's introducing high school students to career options and that kind of thing. Now, I pulled out of that myself due to physical constraints, but we are still going to represent on those 2 days, and Kirsten, our secretary, is going to lead the charge. But I'd really like to see some hands go up if anybody's got time on either of those days to come and help spruik MelbPC / Moorabbin Makerspace and try and use that time, the opportunity that we have to spread the word about our great club. So anybody that can lend a hand, half a day, whole day, both days, whatever you can help with would be really appreciated. Jeff's Shed is the big exhibitions building next to the freeway, just after you go out of the tunnel on CityLink. Near Crown Casino, yeah, next to the river. You do need your working with children's card, current valid, to be able to help on that day. That's a prerequisite because the place is going to be full of school kids. It's reasonable. A lot of us here do already have those things, including myself. But that is a restriction. If you want to come and help, you do need to have that. Question?
You can get those. You can get a Working with Children online. It is free for a volunteer status, and that's what you would be. So don't
That is correct.
Don't let that hold you back.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it can take, I think probably the average is, 28-day cycle to get those things out, and we're right on the edge there. But I got mine in 24 hours.
I think also, if you've already got one, you need to nominate the organisations you're volunteering for.
Yes.
So if you've got another one, you still need to amend it to add MelbPC.
That's a very good point you make, that not only do you have to have a current Working with Children's track, but it has to be related to us, to MelbPC / Makerspace. And that you can just go in and nominate that on your form if you're filling it out, or just go into your account and
it's free for volunteers.
And it is free for volunteers, yeah. And I think you could do it every 3 years or something. But it's a really handy thing to have, and it also lets us know you're a really good person too. Just kidding. But we want to keep the kids safe, and that's the system that we've got to do that. So fair enough for them asking for that. So yeah, don't let that put you off. If you need any help registering for Working with Children's, contact me or the secretary or somebody, and we'll see if we can give you a hand. It's not that hard. Just prove your ID, and they run a background check on you. Anyway, hopefully that goes really well. We've also got a couple of other expos. I think we've got 2 in October now. I haven't got the details in front of me, but it's a little way off. But one of them is at a school for 2 days, a Saturday and Sunday. Again, bring your projects, show off your wares, talk to strangers about the wonderful club that we have. The last expo we went to, poor Paul lost his voice and I nearly lost mine, but I think we made an impact. As small as it might be, we've made some impact. As more people know about us now, and more people might have conversations about us, and that's where it starts. So anyway, moving on. David already touched on website stuff. I just want to thank the web dev team for all the hard work they've been doing behind the scenes, and particularly on the MelbPC website, and updating that and making it relevant and current and all glossy and shiny and cool. They've been working in Sandbox and the like. I believe that's going live in the next 24 to 48 hours, so do check it out. Have a look, and of course there's going to be somebody that's going to say something's wrong with it. So be polite about it. Send your concerns to, I think, straight to the office rather than to the web dev group themselves, because they've got enough emails to wade through each meeting that they have. So, but positivity is the key. Be positive about stuff. Don't put stuff down if you're not going to put your hand up and do it yourself. So good on you guys and girls for doing that. Social media, I'm still trying to learn that stuff. If anybody's got a better idea on Facebook and any other social media platforms that they suggest we should be on to market ourselves, please tap me on the shoulder, give me a hand. Because I want to make it work, but I get really confused with that stuff. So any help would be appreciated. Anyway, the thanks to Rocco and co from Men's Shed. I don't know, I didn't prepare early enough to plug my computer in for everybody to see the pictures, but our TARDIS is in our lounge. I urge all the members here to have a look and interactive display with it, because it does make the TARDIS sound if you trigger it. So, yeah, just another cool thing to have here to attract people, to get selfies in front of and stuff. It's not finished yet, but we're getting there. Maker Mondays is my next point. They're still on twice a month. It's on the calendar. On a Monday, come and build camera sliders. The first one we're building is 1.5 metres long. And I've ordered most of the parts for that, and next Monday we'll be back swinging in, printing the parts for it and building the electronics So come and join us. And if you can't come in on a Monday, come in on a Wednesday and learn some 3D printing, or help me fix some 3D printers, or let's design something to print or something. Let's have some fun. David already mentioned the CNC project. I had a look down there today. It's looking really, really good, and I've got a project for them real soon. So excited about that. He's mentioned the sewing group. Yeah, they're getting involved. I mentioned last month about repair cafes, and we want to start up a repair cafe, and we haven't had much of a hand put up on discourse about that. So I still haven't landed on a date, but it's probably going to be a Sunday once a month. So if anybody's willing to come in on a Sunday once a month to help strangers get their things fixed instead of going to landfill, let me or let Marlon know in the office, and she'll let me know, and we'll put together a roster. I think my time's up. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mick. Times are changing, and this club's trying very hard to adjust, but we have very active leadership in various people, and all of us who are not part of the committee or not part of the leadership need to support them all in what they're doing, and our future then can be better than the past. But thank you for all of those who are committee members or otherwise involved in leadership. Thank you. Now, Harry, are you there?
I am there, thank you. So I have a title, 2 new entrants into the dustbin of history and a nasty little option in Google Calendars.
Yeah. Now, Harry, that's a couple of important things to share with us. And I'd just like to say to everybody that we will stop the recording and formally finish the meeting at 9 o'clock. I think that gives you time to say what you want to say. And then if anyone wants to continue informally after that, then that's okay. Is that all right, Harry?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
So, I hope you can see my title. I'll get on because time is short. First entrant. Don't need much time for this, and I'm slightly curious to know, I don't think we'll find out quickly, what proportion of our members own an Amazon Kindle that was launched no later than 2012. Amazon announced that they're not going to be supporting those earlier Kindles for downloading books directly onto the Kindle. The quote you see on the page does say their accounts and Kindle library also remain fully accessible through the free Kindle app and Kindle for Web. And I hope that means, my Kindle's too young for me to test it, that as long as you've got the account, you can buy a book for the Kindle and download, you can read it on the web, or you can download it to a Kindle app. And I think anyone who's been there will appreciate the value of the Kindle apps. Well, I've got it on the iPad. I suspect that the Android tablets are just as good because you get colour, whereas at least those Kindles don't have colour. And I've found that the iPad is the best way of reading Kindle books. And there's a link there which I'll give you at the end. Well, I'll give you now actually. I'll just go over and get that done just a sec. Where you can find the actual list. There we go. I'll move that. I can't move that away, so I'm going to just copy this into the comments. I don't think you can copy it from my screen directly, can you? So let's go to comments. There we are. There we go. Chat is what it's called, isn't it? Come on, chat. Here we go. The list is published in several places. That's just one I found. Right. On to number 2, which is probably for a proportion of members the most serious, and also the case is different from the case with the Kindles, where it seems Amazon's taken the trouble to tell the owners of those who are registered with it what's coming up. Now, this one came from left field, really. Over the years, a lot of our members have taken up for backup for Windows, Macrium Reflect. And that's been available free as well as in paid versions. Now, as it were from left field, as a result of a change in Windows, those free versions no longer work. I read about it, then I tested because I had been using the free version because my old paid version wasn't allowed to work on my new computer. So first of all, I tried mounting a backup. So if you're in the business, you'll know that's what you do. If you want to look into the backup to see what's there, and you've got the opportunity to copy old files from your backup or whatever. But mounting is not possible for those older versions, free versions of Macrium. There is published a registry hack that is alleged to work around this at the risk of disabling a security setting in Windows. I have tested that and it's failed for me. So I think anyone still using Macrium up to 8.1 needs, as a matter of urgency, to simply try mounting a backup to see if they get this error message. You might want to ask, well, can you actually restore from a backup image, even if you can't mount it? And the short answer to that is I'm almost certain you cannot. My own attempts to attempt the backup have not received a reliable error message. They just haven't worked. And actually, the target disk got trashed. I had to reformat it. But don't just rely on my experience. If you're a user of free Macrium up to 8.1, which is the latest one, by the way, do those tests. Try mounting a backup. Even if that doesn't work for you, you can always try writing. If you've got a spare backup disk, don't put it on your home disk, please. But if you can try restoring a backup image to another USB drive which is spare, see if it'll work. Now, there is a footnote. I've been actually in correspondence with the Macrium folk in the last 24 hours and I haven't had my reply yet. If you look at the Macrium website to see what they're offering, the entry level for paid Macrium is 1 year at 78 Australian dollars, right? The documentation on the Q&A there says there's a question: what happens if you don't renew your subscription? And that says your Macrium will still work in restore mode. So I questioned them, and they were very quick coming back to me actually, but chatbot person, I think it was a human taking over from the chatbot, said, sorry, I can't answer your question. I'll refer it to the technical department. I haven't had my reply yet. If we get a firm reply that the paid Macrium after expiry will support all restore functions, including mounting, that at least will grandfather your access to old backups. You can't make new ones. And there'll be many people. I've got quite a library of Macrium backups because I've got backups from a now abandoned PC as well. And there are probably plenty of members in my position because until quite recently, iHelp would recommend Macrium free. We drifted away from it now because it's part of the trend to move over to paid ones. And so there are very few free backup programs for Windows that we trust. On this one, I think is sufficiently important. I'll try and draft a note for PC Update once I get my answer from Macrium on the matter of the grandfathering, specifically of mounting a backup, as well as what does it mean otherwise? Well, you can restore, and well, in context, it would better mean restoring a full image, right? But a backup is not a lot of use if you can't also mount it when you've got a lot of them, particularly if you're indulging in an attempt to restore an old file that you've changed since the backup was made. So I'll just put up that link at the bottom there, which is Malcolm Miles' quote from the Macrium forum, just a sec. For some reason I can't move my text page there once it's come up, so you're seeing what's going on. There we go. So if you look at Spaces, you'll find a brief discussion of that and that quote by Malcolm. So finally, where have we got? I've only got 1 minute, but I'll tell you what it is, because this has become less urgent because of a change that our administrators have made to the settings for your Google Calendar in your MelbPC Google Workspace account. But what we found, and this has come out of the blue again, really, considering how long we've had the system, that there was a default setting of the permission of how the calendar service deals with attempts to write to your calendar. I've met this in the Apple world. It doesn't seem to be quite as well managed as in the Google world. But there are actually 3 settings, and ours happen to have been set to from everyone, which you can see on the screen at the moment. That has now been corrected for everybody who didn't already have the the one that is more cautious. But you are free to change it. It's just a default, okay? So what I'll do in the last seconds is copy out where you can find the setting. Oh, except something's gone wrong then. Oh dear. I'll see if I can get it up and copy it to the comments anyway, just a sec. I lost my main screen. You've got a black screen there, folks. Have you got a shared black screen?
In the room we can see your text that you're working on.
Something funny happened there, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to stop. Ending that. And I need to, I get stop share then, it was hiding behind my control. So the share should be off now. Is that correct? Are we off?
Yes. I think so.
Good, good. So happy enough about that, because you've got the gen there if you need it. If you're not a user of the calendar, you don't care anyway. Except that I think if the very open setting is there in your Google Calendar, you might get emails, but the open one seems to write directly to the calendar, which seems to me a very insecure feature, as I met that in the Apple Calendar world, and they don't seem to have the right controls for the Apple calendars. So it's, I mean, I actually quoted what our member told us about his mother and then he received what looked like very, very phishing type appointments in their calendars. And it's that setting, when we changed that setting, I didn't do it, the administrators did it. It cured the problem. So that's all I've got to say.
Well, Harry, that's quite a lot to take in. Thank you for that. And thank you for all the work that iHelp do, one of the major services of our club. We're going to stop the recording now and declare the meeting closed. But if people would like to ask Harry any questions, informal Q&A can continue until Harry has to go to bed.
All right, thank you.